Okay, trig, page 10. In the triangle ABC, angle A is 15 degrees, angle B is 63, and length AB is 10 centimeters. Find the length of BC. Okay, so we'll just draw a triangle here, no right angles. We'll say A, B, C. A is 15 degrees, B is 63, okay, and AB is 10. Find the length of BC. So we want to know this length here. We'll call this small a, okay? And this, of course, is small c. All right. So we're going to use law of sines again. So we're going to write that a over sine big A is equal to, in this case, we're going to use, let's see, a. We want to know big A, we already know, C we know, and big B we know. Okay, so this is a little trickier than the others because we do not have a side and angle pair that we know. So you have to use one more thing that you know, which is that the angles of a triangle add up to 180. Since they give you two of the angles, then you can actually figure out what the third angle is, right? So you know that one angle is 15, you know that one angle is 63. Those add up to 78 by themselves. So you know that this angle here that's not labeled is actually 102. Okay? So now we have a relationship of big C and small c. Okay? So, like for example, now we can say, okay, if we know big C and small c, then we know completely this ratio. And if we know this ratio completely, then we can figure out what A is, which is unknown, right? Okay, so let's fill that in. So small c is 10. Big C is 102, like we just found. Big C is 102 degrees. And then big A is 15 degrees. Okay. Let's figure out what these are. Sine of 15, 2.259. 0.259. Sine of 102 degrees. Sine of 102 degrees. 0.978. So, let's see. Just did a little bit of algebra there. I multiplied both sides by 0.259, right? Now I can multiply that on my calculator. So I'm going to I already did the 10 times 0.259. I got 2.59. 2.65. So A is 2.65. And that looks reasonable, right? Because this side is 10, this side is 2.65. Okay. And A was BC. Okay. In each triangle, find the angle indicated. So we want to know what is angle C. So we want to know this angle. What we do know is we know this pair. So we know this pair perfectly. And then we're going to use the fact that we know 10 meters to figure out angle C. So we're going to use the sine rule, A over sine A and C over sine big C. And small a, let me label these so that you know. Oh, actually, we're not going to use big A and small a. We're going to use big B and small b. Right? Because this is small b, and this is big B, and this is small c. Okay, so let's start filling in here. Small c is 10, small b is 15, big B 67. Okay, and the sine of 67, equals 0.921. Try to keep three significant figures on your trigonometric ratios. Now we're going to cross multiply here so that we can get c up to the numerator. So we're going to have 15 sine big C equals 10 times 0.921. 10 times 0.921 is 9.21. Sine of C, let's divide both sides by 15. So then we have that. So the sine of Z is equal to 9.21 divided by 15, which is equal to 0.614. Now to find C, we do the inverse sine, which you did before in the other exercises. Inverse sine of 0.614 is 37.9 degrees. 37.9 degrees. Okay. Angle C. Now we want to know angle Y of this triangle. Let's see. So let's try just using the letters they gave us. You know, we're probably pretty used to the sine rule by now. So this would be small x, and this would be small y. Okay, and then so small x divided by big sine big X is equal to small y over big sine of big Y. Okay, and this is what we want to know. So we know this, we know this, we know this. So we're going to use this relationship, which we know perfectly, to figure out what that relationship is. Okay, so let's start substituting in some things here. X is 10, right? Y is 5. Big Y is, we don't know. Big X is 112. So let's do sine of 112 on our calculator. And we get 0.927. And then we're going to cross multiply here. We'll get 10 sine of y equals 5 times 0.927. And then we'll divide both sides by 10. So now we have the sine of big Y is equal to 5 times 0.927 divided by 10. 0.43 or 464. Now we're going to do the inverse sine of both sides. Inverse sine of 0.4635 is 27.6. 27.6 degrees. Okay? All right. 7. In the triangle PQR, PQ is 5, QR is 6.5, and angle P is 70. Find the size of angle R. Okay. I didn't give you much space here, did I? Let's see. I'll have to make this really big. PQR. So we have PQR, PQR. So PQ is 5, QR is 6.5, and angle P is 70 degrees. Find the size of angle R. Okay, so we know perfectly this relationship, and we're going to use the fact that we know 5 to figure out what angle R is. So let's write out the equation. So we know that small r, this is small r and this is small p. So we'll say small r over sine of big R is equal to small p over the sine of big P. So what's small p? Small p is 6.5. And big P is 70. And small r is 5. And big R is unknown. We'll just leave R there. Okay. Now we're going to cross multiply. So we're going to have sine R times 6.5 is equal to 5 times sine of 70. Okay, and then we'll find values for sine of 70, which is 0.940 sine of 70. And then we'll divide both sides by 6.5. And so we have sine of r is equal to, and then we could multiply everything out. 5 times 9.4 divided by 6.5. And we get 0.723. 0.723. And then we're going to take the inverse sine of both sides. So inverse sine of 46.3. So r is 46.3 degrees. Okay. Those were exercises on how to use sine rule. Now we're going to take a look at cosine rule. Okay, cosine rule you remember how sine rule, I always made a point that, hey, if you know, one pair of opposite angle and side, like say, hey, I know this and I know this. If you know that, then that is an opportunity to use sine rule, because then, like, if you happen to know one of the other sides, then you can figure out the angle, or vice versa. Okay, now if you don't know an opposite angle and side, then you're going to use law of cosines. Okay, so let's look at a couple cases where we have that. Okay, so like look at this case. We know this, but we don't know the opposite side. We know this side, but we don't know the opposite angle. We know this side, but we don't know the opposite angle. So it's not an opportunity for sine rule, but it is an opportunity to use cosine rule. Okay, it says here on the side, it's kind of hard to remember, but if you have two sides in the included angle, or three sides, then you can use the cosine rule. Okay, so this is the included angle because it's the angle that's between the two sides that you know. All right, now the cosine rule looks kind of scary, but after you use it a couple times, you'll be fine. They give it to you on the formula sheet in two forms. One, they give it to you with a squared on the left side. The other is they give it to you with cosine on the left side. And so, like, if you have an unknown angle, you would probably use this form. And if you have an unknown side, you would use this form. But you'll learn the hard way which one is appropriate. And even if you use the wrong one, you just fix it with algebra. Okay, so if you're not really good at algebra, then maybe you might want to uh, be careful about which one you choose in the beginning. Okay, so here we want to know the side y here. Okay, and if we want to know a side, then we should use this formula, right? And it's kind of confusing because this formula uses a, b, c, and right off the bat they give you a problem with x, y, z. Okay, but maybe what we could do is we could relabel everything, and then that'll make it easier. So instead of y, small y, I'm going to have small a, because that's the thing that is on the left side of the equation. Okay, it's good to look for a. It's the easiest in general. So big Y I'm going to rename big A. And then, of course, this would be B, and this would be C. So this would be small b, and this would be small c. Okay, now that I have everything relabeled, now I can use the equation they gave us, and it's not so confusing. Okay, so the cosine of big A would be the cosine of 86.5. The cosine of B and C is 7 and 12, so this would be like multiplied by 7, multiplied by 12. And then the B and C here are also 7 and 12. Okay, and A, of course, we don't know. Okay, so this is kind of a hairy thing to put into your calculator. And you can put this all at the same time, but just make sure that you put parentheses where you need to. Okay, so I prefer just to, like, do some of the things that I can do by hand, I do by hand. So I know that 7 squared is 49, I know that 12 squared is 144. And then, like, 7 times 12 times 2 is like 168, I think. 7 times 12 is 84. 84 times 2 is 168. Okay. And then I'm going to figure out cosine of 86.5, and then I'll just put in the calculator here. 0.061. 0. Okay, 0.061. So I'm going to put here 0.061. And now I'm just going to put this in my calculator. So I got 49 plus 144 minus 168 times 0.061. I get 182.7. So a squared is equal to 182.7. And then to find what a is, I take the square root of that. And I get 13.5. So a is equal to 13.5. And that looks reasonable because the other two sides are 12 and 7. Last one. Okay. Oh, how nice. They labeled everything A, B, C. Unfortunately, the side that they wanted for us to calculate, they labeled C. And we're not used to seeing that. We're used to seeing A squared as the side we want. That's kind of confusing. There's a couple ways to do that. Let me show you the way we just did, okay? So instead of saying, let's make it so that the side that we don't know is A, just to make it easier for us in algebra. So instead of C, small c, and big C, we'll say, hey, small a, big A. Okay, so we're going to say that. So since we renamed that, we're going to have to rename this one too. This will be big B, and this will be big C, right? We're going to do alphabetical order clockwise, okay? And then because we did that, we're going to have to say that this is small c and this is small b. Okay, now we're ready. Okay, so now we have a squared equals b squared. We're just copying this formula here. Minus 2bc cosine of big C. Is that right? Cosine of big A, sorry. So big A is 51 degrees. BC are 6.5 and 8.7. So we have 6.5 squared, we have 8.7 squared, and we have 2 times 6.5 times 8.7, and then we have a squared over here. So we're just going to put this all in the calculator and be very generous with parentheses, okay? So we could put parentheses, and these particular parentheses are not necessary, but it never hurts to put too many, as long as you put them around each term, okay? 6.5 squared plus 8.7 squared minus 2 times 6.5 times 8.7, and we're going to put parentheses around this too, 2 times 0.65. Oh, 6.5. 6.5 times, oops, times 8.7 times, actually just put times, cosine of 51. Cosine of 51. Okay. And our answer is 46.76. And if we take the square root of that, we get 6.84. So the side that we're looking for is 6.84, and they called it C, so it's actually C. Okay, 6.84. Is that reasonable? Yeah, because the other sides are 8.7, 6.5. Sounds reasonable. Okay, that's it for page 10.